So there is a huge amount of interest recently about psilocybin mushrooms and their potential use in treating mental health issues such as social anxiety, depression, those types of things. And Denver this week has decriminalized the personal use of psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, which is extremely exciting. I can't tell you. I mean, it's such a progressive way to think nowadays, and we're not really used to it, are we? Because we live in such a sort of restricted time in history with our governments. They are, well, I mean, they're just quite frankly fairly archaic in the way they think, and they still totally believe that prohibition is the answer, and if you want to stop somebody from using something, it's better just to sort of blanket ban it as opposed to sort of legalize, educate, regulate. One thing I've found massively interesting with mushrooms, and I've had a pretty extensive relationship with them over 20 years. 20 years ago, I scared the living daylights out of myself with magic mushrooms when I got a set and setting all wrong. And what I mean by a set and setting is, where are you, who are you with, how comfortable are you feeling when you take these substances? The really important thing I think I've learned, with the sort of 20 years plus experience with mushrooms, and especially over the last few years, I've really, how can I say this? I've really dived deep into their true sort of potential, and I've done a lot of self-experimentation because, as I think a lot of you know, for many years, over 20 years, I was an alcoholic. I used to drink 100 units of alcohol per week to combat anxiety, depression, and other such mental health issues which coincide with having those sort of conditions. I basically had a stupidly busy brain, and it was just filled with lots of toxic noise and mess and just stuff which just distracted me from life and took a load of my energy, stole a lot of my focus, and I tried to combat that with alcohol and recreational and prescription drugs to try and alleviate how I felt day to day. About 2 years ago now, I started to experiment with microdosing mushrooms. Now, this is something that I'd never really done before. I'd very much used to do sort of recreational doses of mushrooms, let's say 1 to 3 grams kind of experiences. I hadn't really gone higher than that, and I hadn't really gone lower than one microgram. I was very interested in ultimately reading about Steve Jobs and how Steve Jobs for many years microdosed. I'm not sure what he microdosed. I'm not sure if it's the psilocybin mushrooms or if it was LSD. I suspect it was probably LSD. But they're very similar on a chemical level, and I personally prefer magic mushrooms because they're much more natural. They're not lab made like LSD is, and I think for me personally, I get a much more sort of natural energy flow in my body and my mind. So I prefer the psilocybin mushrooms over LSD. Of course, it's a personal preference, and some of you will prefer LSD for sure, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is literally what works for you. But with the microdosing of mushrooms, when I first started doing it, I was taking around 200 milligrams of dried mushroom powder. I'm not sure the percentage of actual psilocybin, the active chemical in it, how much was in per capsule, but I'd take 200 milligrams of the dried powder, so that'd be the whole mushroom all powdered down into a little capsule. Very easy, and you just swallow it at breakfast with some juice. And realistically, the major things I really noticed about it was that it absolutely had a profound effect on my general anxiety. And coming from someone who spent pretty much the entire day in a state of flux, in a state of anxiety, from the moment I woke up, there'd be self-doubts which would trigger anxiety, there'd be depression, there'd be just lots and lots of thoughts just going around, nothing of any real importance, but just enough to distract you and just to take your energy and just to basically make you feel pretty shitty, and in a more sort of heightened state of panic, which again, like I said, I'd try and combat through alcohol, prescription drugs, just to try and ease that down. The 200 milligram dose every 3 days. To be honest, I used to forget sometimes, because to be honest, I used to find that I could still feel the benefits after the third day, and if I wanted to say go out and I wanted to stay out later, I would take an extra one in the evening just to give me that extra energy, because it gives you a wonderful sort of little boost of energy and focus and clarity. So really, really good for social situations. And social situations, again, I used to struggle with, because those would typically trigger the anxiety. I'm hypersensitive to noise and light. Anyway, so busy social environments are just, whoa, pretty stimulating for me. So I found that the microdose of the mushroom really, really helped knock on the head the sort of social anxiety, and allowed me to focus and be actually a lot more present in the here and now. And this is something that I've come to realize now that I spend the majority of my time very, very present. I realized that actually in my past, for pretty much the majority of my life, I wasn't present at all. And my wife always used to say this to me. She's just like, look, you're not present, with me. And that used to annoy her, arguably, rightly so. So it definitely helped with the focus, the clarity, being present in the moment, which is super important in our lives. And, general noise would go down and depression would go down. And I noticed I wasn't so reliant on drinking alcohol. So the microdosing of mushrooms really started me on my journey into really diving very deep into the world of plant medicines, which, as I'm sure some of you will be aware, I've done ayahuasca now 4 times, 4 different retreats. So I think 10 times I've drunk the ayahuasca. We've done mushroom ceremonies as well as San Pedro ceremonies as well. So in the last sort of 18 months, I have dived very, very deep into the world of psychedelics and how they can benefit, how we operate in this world. My professional background is I'm a human behavioral consultant, so I've spent years working with people, helping them overcome physical, mental issues and helping them improve their lives. And I was pretty good at my job, always been pretty good at my job, I'm not going to lie. And I'm not going to allow the ego to sort of flare up there and go, yeah, he's pretty good at his job. But I never really did any work on myself. So this was the crazy thing about my life, is that I would help people with anxiety and depression and physical disorders and illnesses, etc. But I wasn't able to really look after myself, and that's the crazy paradox here, is that I couldn't really look after myself, and my mental health and my physical health declined. So I'm very glad now that I found the world of plant medicines, because it's just incredible. They really do. I mean, you have to work in it. I'm not going to lie, the 18 months hasn't been easy, but they really do make such a huge difference. I feel like a completely different person now. All of the noise in my head, all of this is just gone. It's completely gone. I mean, it's miraculous. I literally can't get over it. When I'd wake up 6 months ago, my head was just busy, just full of rubbish, right? Just full of rubbish. I'm sure so many of you can relate to that. Now, I wake up and my head is just completely empty. And the majority of the day, unless I engage in thought, my head is just super relaxed, like super relaxed. It's almost like I feel like I'm in a meditative sort of state pretty much 90% of the time, and I can't tell you the huge difference that has made to my mental health, my physical health, my personal life, my private life. It's just been wonderful. It's just been wonderful to regain this real estate back as my own, where I'm operating, and it's not just filled with just rubbish and anxious BS and negative stories that I'm telling myself about the world outside me, or I'm challenging myself and giving myself shit and self-hatred and self-loathing and all those really, really negative behaviors, which actually do absolutely nothing for us. They just drag us down. They drag us down and they just fuck us up. And life is too short, and actually life is too wonderful to waste it on these crazy thoughts. And one of the biggest lessons I've actually learned, and I'm going to share this with you before I finish this video, because I'm going to do a lot more videos and go into much more detail over this. But one of the biggest things that I have learned and implemented through using plant medicines and psilocybin mushrooms is understanding 2 things, and it's really, really important, and it's so simple, right? 1, we are not our thoughts. Just because we think it doesn't mean it's real, and it doesn't mean that we're bad people for having those thoughts. I used to beat myself up chronic because I'd have these inappropriate thought processes at the time. Don't we all? I mean, let's be honest. And I would think, oh my God, I'm a pretty shitty person. So we are not our thoughts. You are going to think really crazy stuff at times, and it's perfectly normal. Anybody who says they don't is basically, they're just lying to you. So don't listen to them. Secondly, we're not our past. We use our past to program and to create our identity, the character that you now see before us. Many of us, including me for a long, long time, used my negative past to code who I was moving forward. Once I realised that I'm not my past and I can ultimately recreate and become anybody I wanted to be, confident, able to talk on camera, all of these things that I could never do before. The idea of doing a video like this now and posting it onto the internet where hundreds of thousands of people are going to potentially see it would terrify me. It would terrify me. Now I'm quite relaxed. I'm perfectly relaxed. I actually enjoy making myself vulnerable and listening to feedback that people give, because that means I am learning. So, microdosing, super incredible, changed my life. It was the starting point to where I am now, and it's super easy. I will do more videos about dosing and all this sort of jazz. You can grow them, they're so easy to grow, obviously dependent on where you live. You know, in the UK it is illegal, so you've got to be careful, you've got to be sensible. I can't encourage you to break the law. So yeah, anyway, I hope you all have an amazing day. As I said, more videos will come. If you have anybody you think is going to enjoy this sort of video, make sure you tag them, and lots of love. Follow me on Instagram, it's just @AwesomeBoon. Super easy, and I hope you all have the most wonderful day.